Thank you all so much for coming. My name is Carrie Scarbica. I am an assistant professor of photography here, as well as the current chair of the Visiting Artists and Scholars series here at OSU. The Visiting Artist program here actually brings in about 1 to 3 artists and scholars per term to interact with us and to bring their love to our students and the community. And I'd obviously like to start off with sending a special thanks to Leanne Garrison. Where are you, Leanne? There, oh, of course. Our wonderful Director of the Schools of Arts and Communications. Without her support, this would not be happening. Also, I definitely have to always send out a thank you to my faculty, colleagues, and staff for all the wonderful work that you do helping to make this program so successful. We're all in this together. I don't do this by myself. This is all about you. So this evening, I'm actually really proud to present the artist Sharon Louden. And just a little bit about her before we begin. This is kind of the introductories that we do here, and why she's here. And essentially over the past 4 years here of my time at OSU, I've been teaching a course called Professional Practices for Photographers. And last year I decided to actually utilize and implement some of my support network from the Creative Capital Foundation to employ a series of webinars that look into the content and discuss essentially how to approach the gatekeepers of the world. The gatekeepers is not a word that we like to use, but it is used quite often, as they feel like that sometimes. Now, Sharon Louden happened to be at the helm of this series, which was really great for me. And the information gleaned was not only helpful to my students and their ideas about how to navigate things past this degree program, but also very applicable within my own practice. And when I found out that she was heading this way on her 100 million book stop tour, I knew that I had to try to fit her in if it was possible. And we're very lucky to have her, for sure. She's been basically bouncing in between. I'm surprised she's actually still standing at this point. Now, if you were in Sharon's workshop today, as many of you were this afternoon, you would know that a ton of information was passed on to the students and the faculty in attendance. Her energy was contagious, and her passionate workshop detailed how to move forward and think about one's place as an artist in this world. The information provided was not only pertinent to the experience we all share as makers, but the tactics and strategies given were practical advice that can be applied today, right now. So hopefully you walk away this evening with something you can do tonight, actually even as soon as you get home. Now, Sharon Louden has an extremely ambitious and impressive resume. She received her BFA from the School of the Art Institute in Chicago. Her MFA comes from Yale University. You might have heard of 2 of those places. Highlights of her exhibition record include the Aldrich Contemporary Art Museum, the Drawing Center, Carnegie Mellon University, the National Gallery of Art, Birmingham Museum of Art, Weatherspoon Art Museum, and the Kemper Museum of Contemporary Art, just to name a few. Her work is held in major public and private collections, including the Whitney Museum of American Art, the National Gallery of Art, the Newburgh Museum of Art, the Yale University Art Gallery, Weatherspoon Art Museum, and the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston, also among just a few to mention. Currently she lives in Queens, New York, with her cool jazz musician husband and manager, Vincent. You might have met the gentleman out with the books. And she's currently a senior critic at the New York Academy of Art and teaches at the School of Visual Arts and now the New School. She is also a consultant for the Joan Mitchell Foundation and the Creative Capital Foundation. She's the editor of 2 published books that I know of, Living and Sustaining the Creative Life, Essays by 40 Working Artists, and The Artist as Cultural Producer, Living and Sustaining a Creative Life. Somehow, she even managed to find time to make her art and all of this. Anyway, her latest book, is The Cultural Art Producer, is actually available for sale following this lecture tonight. And so please get yourself a copy, get a signature from Sharon on the way out. But please now join me in welcoming artist, entrepreneur, visionary, and general badass, my new friend, Sharon Louden.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. How are you? I always want to take a picture of everybody before the lights go down. So can you all smile for me? Because I have to show the world that I was actually here. So, here. Will everybody say hello? Hello! Ready? Cheese! Yay! All right, thanks. Now I got that. Okay, so thank you so much. Leanne and Carrie, thank you, Carrie, so much for believing in me and for allowing me to be here. As Carrie said, I'm an artist. and I'm on a massive conversation tour. This is my 64th stop out of 100. We've been in 2 countries, well, no, this country and 2 other countries. And part of this tour, which is being sort of broadcasted all over the country in many different ways, and I'll get to that in a few minutes, is tied together through this hashtag, Live Sustain. So anybody who wants to take photographs or participate through any social media, just use that hashtag. And then we'll be able to track your participation beyond this talk today. So anyway, I want to be able to start by saying I am an artist, and I think oftentimes people think just because I made these books doesn't mean that maybe I'm a full-time artist, but actually I am. And that artists wear multiple hats. So I'm going to just go over just a little bit. Can everybody see this okay?
Yes.
That was good. So as an artist, I went, as Carrie said, I went to School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and I went to Yale. When I graduated from Yale, I graduated with $115,000 in debt, which is equivalent of $206,000 today. I paid those debts off in 10 years as an artist. Me and my husband are our only support team, our only family. He is in the corner right there. He is the jazz musician project manager. And we, over the last, I think, since 1991, I lived in New York for 23 years, and then I moved to Minneapolis for 3 years, and then I moved back to New York, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I work in different media, but I'm going to talk mostly about right now, just to go over some of the work that I do, mostly these large-scale installations. And I think it's good for the students to see this too, because some people who make work that may not be sellable per se can still sustain a creative life. So I'm going to take you through one idea of using these anthropomorphic little forms that I have, which are made of aluminum. This is just aluminum from Home Depot, actually. And what I did was I just put them together in this composition that created these sort of cellular forms that then created a whole environment. This is at Munson Williams Proctor Institute, and then 6 years later, that idea just sort of simmered over time, and then I reconfigured this and expanded the idea in a different space, and this is at Project 4 in Washington, D.C. So then they started to multiply, and then I really blew it out. At the Weisman Art Museum in 2011, I made this piece, which is made of 350,000 strips of aluminum, 20,000 screws, and 20 pounds of glue. And so for me, part of the reason why I blew this out and expanded this so much and really created this environment based on these tiny little gestures, or what I call these anthropomorphic forms, is by doing that, it sort of took over the interior of this Frank Gehry museum. This was actually on the occasion of Frank Gehry's, his first museum is the Weisman Museum in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and there was an addition to the museum. So this was sort of my response to the external part of the museum, is sort of the internal part that I was imagining his architecture to be. So my work was sort of perfect for this, I think, for this dialogue. And then for me, all of my work is drawing in space. So these shadows actually extend the sculpture that I think extends also the environment by which I'm trying to create. And these forms for me are like of nature but not of nature. They allude to it. So for me as an artist, I really believe that if you have an opportunity, you must share it. But also you can create your own standards or actually create standards for your community that you can raise the bar. So for every project that I work on, I usually hire people and I make it like a residency. So I hire artists. I always hire artists. And then I'm just going to talk money here, and this is really for the students to know this. And I think I talked about it a little bit earlier today in class, that in New York, the average for an artist to work on a project is $15 to $25 an hour. I think that that's really low, actually. So for my projects, I pay them $35 to $50 an hour. I put that in the budget in advance before I sign a contract, so that I can spend a lot of the money, or much of the money of that commission. This is a museum commission that then goes towards labor to raise that standard and then get closer to a living wage for artists. You can see here that the way that I made this project piece is that I put these little strips of aluminum together, and then everybody would just physically put them together with glue and screws. And the reason for this too is it's always good to ask people for help. In 1990, I got my hand caught in a printing press at Yale University, and so my right hand has only 25% mobility, so I find it very difficult, although I'm ambidextrous. There's always a silver lining to trauma. So now I'm ambidextrous in the studio, but I don't have that same power or control, so everybody here is helping me. And actually, when I do these projects, and if I like you, I will then fly you to doing public art projects outside of that first original project that we're working on. The other thing I like to do when I do projects is I like to make things very transparent. So I believe that the art world should be much more transparent. We should know everything, and I do believe that the art market should be regulated. I really think that that would be a very big help. We're the only non-regulated market in all of the markets in the world. So anyway, as far as transparency though, what I do, this is for a crazy project, which I'm not showing you pictures of, it's on my website, but you can see here, it looks like a big mess. So nonetheless, sometimes projects are failed projects, but in a way, this was not so failed. What I did was I put up a sign that said, if you want to participate and be a part of this project, feel free to take a selfie and send me an Instagram and I'll correspond with you. 2 years, about 50 a week, I had these. People love this material. This is highly reflective aluminum that's actually very rare. You can't get it in this country. We can't find it in this country for some reason. We can only get it through one source in Canada. It's raw aluminum, so everybody loved taking pictures with it for some reason. There were people who got married in my installation, and somebody came in and played guitar in there too. I thought it was hilarious. This is another project. This is a project in Duluth, actually, Minnesota, where this is only about 3,500 square feet, but about 33-foot ceilings. And so these are very large sheets of aluminum, and essentially manipulating them to form them in a graceful way that implies movement, but also changes the environment to make it inclusive. And in fact, I think all of my work is about that. I think I try to make environments that generate inclusivity. And that goes right into my books. So that's just a little bit about my work. I also do animation, drawing, painting, public art projects, and I do that all the time. But I also do these books. So in 2011, I was doing a panel for the College Art Association conference. I was moderating it. It was called How to Make a Living With or Without a Dealer. And 400 people were in that audience, and one person was my publisher. You never know who's in the audience. Who's in the audience here? Who's gonna pop out here? Is there another publisher? A movie star? We're all movie stars here. Anyway, so my publisher was in the audience, and she came up to me later and said, we really want you to write a book. And I said, I can't write a book. I can't even write an artist statement. I said that earlier today. And so she said, what would you want to do if you wanted to do a book? And I said, I felt like in 1991, when I graduated from Yale, that many students were holding things like this to them. Not students, I'm sorry, my fellow classmates, former students. And they weren't sharing enough. There wasn't enough exchange. And I really didn't like that, because I really believe that, again, when you have an opportunity, you must share it. And when that happens, it makes our community much stronger, and there's much more opportunity for other people. So we did this book. I asked 40 artists, 19 people from New York, 19 people from the rest of the country, 2 people from Europe, 21 women, 19 men, aged 30 to 66, to just start a conversation by writing in their own words how they sustain a creative life. Beth Lippman, she has an essay in here, it's only 2 paragraphs long, and then you have Maureen Connor, who's much, much longer. And it's just sort of elastic, and you can flip around in the book. It's all in order chronological by first name, because then it makes it more conversational, less formal. Anyway, I had no idea that this book would take off. So this book is in its 7th printing. We went on a 62-stop book tour. We had conversations all over the country, and this book has been sold in 18 countries. And it just keeps going. And that said to me that essentially people are interested in artists today. They are interested in conversation. And these events that I've been having on these tours have been just like this, where either I give a presentation or I have a moderated conversation with not only the contributors to the book, but also other people from the community. And that generates conversation that hopefully can create outcome. And what it does too is bring up certain issues about creativity, free expression, social justice, and also that the fact is that artists not only contribute to the economy, but we also, more than anything, contribute to the well-being of others. And so it's not only inspirational. For me, inspiration is great, but it doesn't go anywhere, really. It may fizzle out, may be temporary. But I'm interested in outcome. So when people get together in these, where they've been getting together in these audiences coming together, most people don't know everybody in the audience. So what ends up happening is people say what they need and what they want. And when somebody says what they need and what they want, when artists say that publicly, there's usually somebody in the audience or myself that can act as a catalyst to fill that need. So did everybody get an index card as they walked in? I would love for people to write down for our Q&A to be able to generate a question that goes towards your needs and wants. And we can talk about that after this. So sometimes I felt like I was in this truck. And I do think trauma really shapes our lives, because the reason why we were in New York and then we had this break for 3 years and went to Minneapolis is that in 2013, we had a house fire in Brooklyn in Christmas night, 2013. And we had already gone through a year, we already gone through 9/11. We lived a block and a half from the World Trade Center, so we were evacuated and dealt with that. And then my husband's studio from Hurricane Sandy was completely flooded. And then the house fire, and I thought, okay, we're out of here. Three strikes, we hear you, New York, we're gone. And so we moved to Minneapolis because Minneapolis is the #1 funder in the country for the arts. And we also knew a lot of people there. We thought, you know what, we're in our 50s, why don't we go there, well, almost 50, I was 49. Why don't we go there and maybe start a life there, even though all of my friends were in New York. So we were homeless for 229 days on that book tour. The book tour sort of evolved. Publishers don't set up book tours. I did it myself, which I'm very proud of. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because I'm just an artist just like all of you. This is very doable. What I did was I just tapped into basically all my friends and the people I've kept in touch with all of these years and cultivated community all of these years. And so I said, how can we collaborate? How can I bring this book to you? How can I bring examples of sustainability to you? So I felt like I was in that van, but look at this guy. Doesn't he look like a serial killer? He's one of my contributors. That's who I have around me. Talk about cultivating community, that's Blaine. And then we did our Basel at the art fairs in Miami. I was on the radio with Bad at Sports. It was an amazing experience. The statistics for this tour are, we met over 5,000 people over the course of 18 months. And we started this book tour through a Kickstarter. We live tweeted that event, at each event, just like we're doing that today. And I always start out with the Strand in New York, because I remember when I first got to New York in 1991, I was very poor, and I would bring my old books there and they would buy them. So I feel this sort of cultural reciprocity with them. Okay, so when I was on that first tour, my publisher said, hey, do you want to do another book? Of course we're going to do another book. What I noticed on that first tour was the public still looked at me and other artists as they were surprised when they saw that I obviously would take a shower before the event, that I didn't have paint in my hair, that actually I can speak in completed sentences like I'm trying to do now, and that I'm not a lazy individual. I'm really offended by all of those things, actually. I hate the stereotype that Vincent van Gogh died in 1890, a long time ago. And so we are not those people who are long gone and dead. The artist hero is over. So what I also noticed, though, on the other side of it, was that artists still think that the only way to sustain a creative life is through a gallery. Wrong. So, and in fact, some artists would come up to me and they would say, wow, you can't have a gallery and do a lot of other things. And I was like, really? So I sort of was upset about both of those two things. And the only way that I can get it out of my system is actually to publish a book. So I did this second book, and this book is, like I said, now on this big tour. And I selected 40 artists, and Harad Vartanian from Hyperallergic did the foreword, and I had 3 powerful women do the conclusion. With this book, I wanted to make this tour completely sustainable. With my first and my second book, all the royalties of both books are divided between all the contributors. I count myself as a contributor. Why did I do that? Because in publishing, anthologies, usually the editor makes all the money from it. And I'm not talking about a lot of money. 8% of royalties for my first book, 10% for the second book, up to 2,500 copies. And we've already sold 2,500 copies for my second book. So then after 2,500 copies, 12%. It's not like we're making a lot of money here. So these are the checks that we've made from the first book each year. $10.04. Wow, that was amazing per person. $51.26, $15.42, and I just wrote checks for the contributors of the first book of $17.89. Now the reason why I bring this up is I think it's really important for people to know that even though that books have a lot of validation and they're very powerful, there's this sort of mystique that you can make a living from that as well. But at least I'm using this to try to be able to change publishing and how we look at it. I also negotiated in my contract that everybody gets their own copyright. This book tour is fully sustainable except for the first event, but we even pay for everybody's drinks. And then we've also made this conversation tour a case study. So we're recording this so that when we hear your feedback, I'm going to be able to share that data of all of these events with nonprofit organizations and probably do an exhibition too of this. And then we made Living and Sustaining Creative Life a fiscally sponsored entity by NYFA. So the big thing is, speaking of partnerships, and I'm just watching the time because I can go on for much longer. The thing is, I believe in cold calls, meaning that not physically picking up the phone, but I believe in that you can just directly contact somebody. And I really truly believe that if you find the right fit. So just in short, this was a long story about the Ford Foundation, but I heard Darren Walker, who is the executive director of the Ford Foundation, on a radio program when I was in my office in Minneapolis last summer in 2016. And I said, I gotta meet this guy. So I got his email address. I took somebody out to lunch and they gave me his email address, cultural reciprocity. And then I cold called Darren Walker. I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks, so then I found his executive assistant's address. And I met with him, I got a meeting with him. And he said, put together a document for me that outlines 3 points as to what you want to do with me. Because all I wanted to do was partner with him and have him come on the tour with me, because I sort of had a crush on him. So all the things he was talking about in creativity and free expression. So we took the momentum, we sent him a document the next day, because I believe in that momentum. That's an invitation to be able to go forward. And I sent him the email at 8:31 p.m., I think it was. And then I think at 8:46 p.m. he responded back saying, not only will we endorse you, we're going to give you $50,000 to marginalized communities all over the world. So we have great partners who believe in this project. Isn't that cool though? Like every artist here, don't ever be afraid. I think is if you find the right fit with someone, you can really partner with them. And I consider Ford a partner, obviously. So I'm on the board, I think as far as being an artist, I do a lot of different things. I'm on the board of the EFA Elizabeth Foundation for the Arts. I work for Joe Mitchell Foundation, the New York Academy of Art, and then I also partner with these organizations, including the Tremaine, and I'm a big advocate for this. So if anybody wants to take a screenshot of this, This is called artistthrive.org, this website. And what it is, it's a rubric for artists to be able to really sustain their lives through professional development online, and it's free. So these partners that I work with all believe in individual artists. And I really believe that all of us can make a difference in moving artists forward. Did everybody get that? So the tour itself, don't these guys look like mountain men? Look at that ceiling. These are contributors to my book. So Steve Lambert and Khaled Sabsabi, they had never met before. In my second book, I decided that I'm going to use it also as a platform to be able to not only cultivate community, because I can use this book in all different ways. And how did I do that? I decided to pick people, half of the people in the book I never met before, including these two. And then use that too to connect them together. So Steve was going to be in Australia. Khaled Sabsabi lives in Western Australia. Steve was going to be there. I said, you guys are in my book, why don't you both connect? They not only connected, but they're going to be collaborating together. And that's what I mean about not only sharing, but getting people together. And then once you get people together too, we can create more opportunities for others. And surely they're going to. So earlier today, and just a few minutes ago, I mentioned Rod Vartanian. So Rod Vartanian is the editor-in-chief of Hyperallergic, which is a really important blog. And if you haven't heard it before, I highly recommend that you subscribe to it. It's free. And he is really a critic that is an anomaly in the art world. He wrote the foreword to my book, but he's super accessible, and we do a lot together. And the reason why I bring this up too is I really believe that there are no divisions in the art world. That me as an artist can not only be friends with critics and curators and museum directors, we can collaborate though together too. And I do believe that those restrictions and those divisions are completely gone. He and I we launched this at the Strand, this book at the Strand on March 2nd together. And these are the contributors that were there that evening. So you can see the faces of 18 contributors that are in this second book. They all know that this is not a money-making venture, but they do believe that by doing this, we can actually change our culture. So a couple of artists that are in this book that have done a lot to change culture is, I'm going to show, is one of whom is Edgar Arce. Edgar is an artist in Los Angeles who not only, he actually just directed Ben Vereen in a play that's traveling all over the country. He does drawings that shows at Suzanne Vellemetter Gallery in Los Angeles. He teaches at USC. He also makes installations, that one of which that was a big installation and exhibition at MIT last year, MIT Liss Art Center. But he also started a nonprofit organization called Watts House Project for Watts neighborhood in Los Angeles. Now that project, it failed actually, and he learned a lot from it, and it touched a lot of people's lives temporarily, and I think that's absolutely fine. But the point is, he actually attempted to do that, and he does so many different things. Again, an artist wearing multiple hats. Sharon Butler, has anybody ever heard of 2 coats of paint? You might want to take a screenshot of this too. She started a blog in Mystic, Connecticut, in her attic in Mystic, Connecticut. What she did was, she was sitting in her studio, she's a painter, and she was very frustrated because she didn't have a lot of community there. She felt very isolated. And she also wasn't seeing a lot of criticality in painting, and not enough reviews or not enough of contact with other painters either. So she started this blog, and now it's an award-winning blog by the Andy Warhol Foundation, and she pays writers. So any of you in the audience who's a writer who wants to write about painting, pitch it to her. Tell her I sent you. There's her website. You can tell her I sent you. She'll love it, actually. She pays writers, but she also does things like 3 or 4 times a year, she gives her studio for a week over to another person and she's created a studio residency for people from out of town, so they have the opportunity to connect with people in New York. And then she also started a stock club for artists, $50 stock club. So she said, hey, who wants to make money? And she put it on her blog. A bunch of people got together, invested in stocks together, made a lot of money. Pretty simple. Zooey and Tim. Zooey is actually the artist whose work is on the cover of the book. These two are collaborators at American University. They wrote an essay together for my book. And what they did was they came in they both came in at the same time 14 years ago at AU. And they didn't like how American University was very isolated. So they said, you know what, we were gonna change that. And what they did was they actually started partnerships with a whole bunch of museums in the DC, Virginia, Maryland area. And not only did they do that, but they also created a place called Syndicate, which is a nonprofit organization that they do together, that they show artists and artist projects, experimental projects. They also buy artists' work, they place artists' work and student work, and they engage in the community and use the department as a way of connecting, sort of like what universities may have been in the past, which is really like a place of a think tank or a place where research comes alive into the public realm. So we have had such a good time on this tour. This is at the Hirshhorn with Edgar, Zooey, and Tim, and the conversations have generated jobs. At this one in particular, somebody got a job from this. They've generated opportunities. They have generated validation, for sure, for many artists. And then a lot of conversation that has come up that is hard to talk about. Because when an artist, myself, brings other artists together, that immediately creates a safe space for freedom of expression. So this has just been this nut tour, it's crazy. And so it's been awesome. The index cards that were just given out to you, I've done this before, where I give index cards out and people then feel a sense of safety in anonymously asking the question. So here are some of the questions that people have asked. So in Cincinnati, somebody asked, what makes you feel most vulnerable as an artist? How can I cultivate a sense of confidence in myself on a day-to-day basis? In today's political climate, how can one person or group of persons make an impactful statement without coming across negatively or a bleep? Through graphic design as an art form, I often ask myself and have the conversation with those around me, through art, what can we do? These are powerful. How do you create generosity when no one around you is reciprocating it? How, when you first start as an artist, do you connect with people who are interested in community building and helping one another? When being paid for a piece of work, how do you know you aren't being cheated out of the value of your work? And then this is one of my favorites. This was written by a man in his 70s at Chautauqua in New York, and he writes, artists must be relevant to their communities beyond their work. Partnerships with collectors, writers, painters, educators are an example. I can't agree more. So what I've learned on this tour is that artists most want these things. Validation, permission, nobody needs permission. You already have it. And opportunities, for sure. And everyone always asks me, what are the keys to sustain a creative life? I always say, you have to read my books, but here's my cheat sheet. So what I've learned from my research, and I'm working on 2 other books too, so I really have a lot of research, is that most artists keep their expenses low. That's a huge, huge key, if you can keep your expenses low. Persistence, apply for everything that fits, meaning that, and I talked about this earlier today, meaning that if you, let's say, paint figuratively, you probably wouldn't want to collaborate with somebody who's just showing abstract painting, right? You want to find who you fit with. Do the work, research. I think most artists who are, quote, successful really, really do the research themselves. They find these people to fit with. Share, cultivate, and create your own community. Think of the other person first. A lot of times artists just think of themselves, or we're in our sort of holes, and that's the stereotype, by the way. We're in our white boxes, and we only come out for the reveal when we have our opening, and then we go back into our holes. No. But I do think that we still have a certain mentality that we don't think of the other person first. And I think when developing a relationship naturally, I think that's really important. I don't believe there's any such thing as a rejection. It's only a difference of opinion. And then finally, generosity yields generosity. That's really, really important, and it's proven, and it's factual. So one reason why I keep my contact information up here, and I will through our Q&A, is because I believe that I can be a catalyst, and I have been for many artists. I feel like that's a gift, actually. I feel giving is a gift. And I always say, you're welcome to email me, but it might take me a long time to get back to you. However, and also just tell me who you are, because I get some people who I'm uncomfortable receiving information from. But I think that it's really important to open that door and make me available for cultural reciprocity and opportunities. So if we can get the lights, and then we can go to this next part, and I would love to field your questions. That would be great. Okay, so somebody said, how do you cultivate creative community when you're still struggling to believe that you belong as an artist to begin with? I think you have to dig in and have faith in your work and who you are, and know that if you feel like you have a voice and you have to do it, like for me, I have to make work. I can't not make work. I have to wake up in the morning. I'm gonna do something as in my life as an artist, whether it's my books or working for these nonprofit organizations or being in my studio. I also draw with people, with other artists. I go to restaurants and draw with them, so fun. I do one mark, they do another mark. It's sort of like an exquisite corpse. Does anybody know what that is? So, but just by going out and we just pull out our sketchbooks, like it's breathing. So I have to do it. That's my identity. So if most artists I know have to do it, like we're dying every day to do it. We have the drive to do it. It's in our, like my teeth hurt right now. So if you feel, so I don't have that kind of doubt. So I think that you can cultivate that community and believe in yourself as an artist and not by anybody else's value of you, just of what you feel. Does that make sense? I know that person doesn't probably want to come forward, but you can talk to me after if you want. And somebody asked me, how do you know what your art is for? It's for me. It's my voice. It's my truth. It's my language. It's not for anybody else. I share it with everybody else because I want to, but it's my voice, right? Is it your voices? Would you say that, everybody? How do you keep your self-confidence up with rejection? Well, there's no such thing as rejection, right? None. No such thing. It's rejection if your mom yells at you or you get dumped. Oh, that's really bad. Don't divorce me, Vince. Not really rejection. You know, I've had to build that up a lot. I think being a strong woman who's loud, I've been criticized a lot, been called a lot of names, but you know, it's too exhausting to try to be somebody else. So I have to be who I am, and I wouldn't be up here on the stage if I wasn't who I was. I think that's probably right. I just don't care anymore. I'm not caring as much. The only people I really care about, I care about all of you. But the people I do care about artists, or else I wouldn't be doing this. I definitely am an advocate for artists, but I really care about the people I love around me the most, and they affect me the most. Somebody asked me, how do you start making connections? Where did you start with your work? I think you start making connections. I talked about this earlier today in the class by trying to find that right fit with people. And I think Carrie can probably go through the whole system that I went through today. Could you do that?
Sure. Right, to reproduce it?
Yeah.
Get to 24,000 on...
No, just to talk about it with everybody.
Yeah.
You could a little bit, right? I think everybody who was there could talk about it with others.
Sure.
But basically making connections, you reach out to people that you really have a like mind with. I think it's great to take somebody out for coffee or for dinner, share a meal, and start talking about your work, or ask to do a studio visit. Inquire about somebody else's work. Share people's work on Instagram, not just your own. Start participating in conversation on social media. I know so many people from Twitter. It's like they're friends of mine, but I've never met them. It's sort of weird. But because we've had exchange, it's great in that way. I think that really works. Somebody's asking me, I'm having so many rich experiences in my life right now. Well, that's awesome. How can I take these abstract, intense concepts and manifest them into a tangible, potentially material, relatable object or experience? I don't know what you're talking about, but I want to share what I'm experiencing, but I don't know how. I'd have to know what you're experiencing. Can you talk to me later? Will you talk to me later? Okay. What small things can I do every day to invite collaboration and experimentation in my life? Embrace play. I think we forget that. As artists, we can play, you know? Like, just play. Don't take it so seriously. I like to doodle. I'll never forget going to Jonathan Lasker's studio in 1991. Do you know who that is? Jonathan Lasker is an artist and pretty established now. And he would just tell me, oh, I just start doodling by the phone, and it turns into a painting. And I was so amazed by that, because everything we do counts. But we don't have to take it so seriously. As far as inviting collaboration, go to a restaurant and ask somebody to draw with you, like I do. I go to Le Pen Quotidien. Do you know what those are? There's like a chain in the East Coast, at least. And they have big tables, so we can bring our sketchbooks, and we just get pencils, and we just talk, and one person puts a mark down, and another person puts a mark, and all of a sudden we have a drawing, and that's collaboration. Anyway, those are a little bit of answers. Isn't this fun? Are you bored? I'm not. What does the world need from artists to get out of our white boxes and to show who we are? I think we have to show who we are. I think part of the reason why we're stuck as artists to not have as many opportunities, and we're so dependent on this gallery system that only serves the 1% of artists, not even, probably 0.001% of artists in the world, is because we're so beholden to that one system that's isolating. So when we isolate ourselves, then we don't have the opportunity to reach and create bridges with others. So I think the things we need to do, and the world needs, is to see us and to collaborate with others. And I think what the world needs too is more of us making our work visible, because that is a political act, just making our work. And to have it out there, because it shows that we can be free in art expression, which is always being challenged, especially at the moment. I want to create a better community between the science and the arts communities. Oh, cool. At times I feel I'm forced to choose between two worlds that I love. Why? Who's forcing you to do that? They're so interconnected. I had an exhibition at National Institutes of Health one time in their lobby. I thought that was so, for me, one of the best experiences, because I got to be able to have my work in context with scientists' photographs of their experiments. And that context created a different dialogue. So why not do something like that? Maybe make a physical connection yourself. Maybe insert yourself into a space where you physically get them connected and resist the division. That's what I would say. I mean, everybody can talk to me afterwards with details. This is highly interesting. Let's see, somebody's saying, should I leave my hometown to pursue art? It all depends what you want in your life. So I think that urban areas are not necessarily the right areas for people either. New York is not the end all either. So I would say you can make value in your community. You don't have to leave. And then just a few more questions. This evening I mentioned, or saying you mentioned, what is best for your work, opposed to what is best for yourself. Do you emotionally separate yourself from your works? If so, how? I don't. I don't separate myself from my work. So yeah, what is best for my work, but I'm a vehicle for my work. So I think it's important to have a certain amount of objectivity to be able to create paths for yourself professionally. But when I'm in my studio, I don't separate myself. And then, how did you choose the artists you collaborate with on your book? Great question. I actually haven't been asked that in a while. So So my criteria for people that I work with, no matter who they are, is that they have to be givers to artists. I've been known to have people ask me, and I've been very grateful for this. I feel really humbled by this, that people want to be in my books. One person recently, I was in an opening, she came up to me and said, I just wonder if you'll consider me for your book. And I said to her, do you give to artists? And I started counting seconds. And after 5 seconds, I said, I can't work with you, because she didn't answer the question. She had to think about it. I can't work with anybody who doesn't give to artists. So that's my first criteria. My second criteria is that they're generous in creating opportunities for those artists. My third criteria is they're not difficult. They're actually nice people. And my fourth criteria is that they're the same person in the books as they are on stage. So all of these people, especially in my second book, the first book I didn't vet as well as I did the second, and I was bitten by 2 artists in that first book, because they weren't the same people in the book as were on stage. But in my second book, everybody is, and they're all givers. And I think that sometimes artists think that if they give away everything of themselves. But what we've done in this book together as a shared project is that we actually have proven that wrong. That when you give to others and you open the door to other people, especially other artists, to collaborate with them, you create other things, and other things financially too, that benefit everyone. And the stories in these books prove that actually. And then we have a lot of data too, from, like I said, from this tour, but just significant things, like just the few examples I gave you of Edgar and Sharon Butler and Zooey and Tim. So by them doing those activities creates a bigger, stronger community.
Graduate school or real graduate school?
Absolutely graduate school, MFA all the way. Oh my God, that can be a jingle. MFA all the way. Why? Because the people I got my MFA with, they're a close-knit community for me. That was instant community. Then the other thing is an MFA, I'm an advocate for more education, for sure. And it's a different kind of education than undergraduate education. I think they're in huge contrast. Most schools have huge contrast. And then if you go to a school that has a great alumni program, that can benefit you way beyond your MFA experience. Thank you for asking that. Yes, ma'am.
How did you come to your decision to stop paying the office assistants so much? I mean, it must have been hard at the beginning, but you screwed over as a young artist in helping other people. The financial side of paying artist workers.
So I just don't like that artists can't make a living wage in our own industry. I find it really disturbing. So now I'm in a position to negotiate contracts enough to be able to have those fees for artists. So I think about that in advance. No, I was never screwed over as an artist in that way, but I just don't like the model. I think that the model should change. And the only way to change it is if artists who employ other artists increase the value of how much they're paid. That's as simple as that. So I really try to make that effort to do that. I'm going to do a big museum project in Wyoming next year, and that project, I'm employing artists, but I've also asked, it's a university museum, I've asked them to do a call for students so they can make it a residency program so that I can work with them in educational capacity, but also they'll get paid. But I'll vet them, I have to vet them. And because they can't be Debbie Downers, or can't be, I have to get along with them. They have to be generous, right? They have to help other artists. So they have to go through my criteria, essentially. And then I get to work with them and then hopefully stay in touch with them. I think the other thing I'm trying to do, and I posted this on Twitter, I got a lot of flack from some educators, which bothered me. But what I said on Twitter, and I've been advocating this to other schools, is you should have people in, like myself, I'm very proud of this, who's a catalyst, who physically likes to connect artists to making opportunities, have those visiting artists come in, versus artists that come in who just pontificate about themselves and not give to people beyond their visit. So I'm trying to advocate for more schools to do that, because there are many artists in the 99% who love the opportunity to lecture, who can actually give to other artists and create opportunities beyond their visits. And those are the people who should be going to school. Because that's a way for students to stay in touch with people who not only come and visit here, right, but then they go out into the world with them in a way. The students become a part of their community. So I'm trying to do all that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question. I can't believe I got flack from that, from educators. Yeah.
Does the aluminum crease? It looked like it was also smooth, those big sheets of aluminum.
In those projects, I'm really uptight on them anyway, but in those projects, if I curl it too much, it can ding, and then I have to scrap it. But in my studio right now, I'm trying to get over that and get through that. But that's a good question, thanks. Yeah. Yeah.
So you mentioned how inspiration is something we should act on as soon as possible.
Yeah.
To lose that inspiration. I'm curious, especially for older students, like, if you really don't have the time and you're just like a really inspired person. Like, I constantly get inspired, but I just really struggle to find the time to really illustrate that inspiration the way I want to, and I don't have the time. And that's, I mean, obviously an MFA that helps combat that, but how do you put down those inspirations to then work on them later? Like, do you
I mean, I could just write them down, share them with another person. You can record them. There's many ways of documentation. I think there are many ways to act on inspiration that can be really simple. Have a dinner party with people and talk about it. You have to eat, right? I think it's more about intention. So instead of maybe watching Real Housewives of Beverly Hills or something, then you sit and, or I do believe that we need time off, right, and to do things for ourselves. I'm not trying to say take away from that, but maybe if you want to be able to use time rather than watching, let's say watching television while you're eating, even if you need a respite, but maybe if you're so inspired to be able to use that time to share a meal with somebody else, to share that inspiration. Acting on something means that you can share it. That's one way of acting on it. Another way is to share it and then figure out with that person what to do with it. It doesn't have to be instant. It can happen over time. That's what I would just say. I think it's more about intention. Any questions? Other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What happens to those installations?
Oh, yeah.
After the shows are over?
Great question. Recycling. So it's much faster to take them down than it is to put them up. So with that project where there were 16 young students that worked with me at the Weisman, it took them like a day. It took 5 weeks to put it up and a day to take it down. And they just recycled it. They recycled it. I don't like actually to distribute that metal. First of all, it's very sharp and it can hurt you. Like we went through 350 Band-Aids on that first project, So it's not that I'm trying to hurt anyone, but it's hard. It's like paper cuts, because the sides are so sharp. So I'd rather not be responsible or liable for that. So the museums usually discard it. That's it. It's very easy.
So is that typical of most museums that have these kind of shows?
I mean, I think these temporary installations, yeah, they can discard it or they dismantle it, and then they can pack it in such a way that it can be reinstalled. But I prefer, my work is in the moment, so I prefer for it not to be reinstalled in the same way. And then also I'd be worried about those dings in the aluminum, and it would bother me. So I'm a little bit of a control freak, so I don't think I could deal with that. It's a good question. Why do you ask?
Because I've always wondered what happened.
You know, what's so great about these museums and great about collaborating with curators is they love to take risks just like artists. And so it's a wonderful experience doing that and living in the temporary in a lot of ways. A lot of people are uncomfortable with that. I'm not. It's fun. I feel really grateful for it. Thank you for asking. Okay, any other questions? Yes, sir.
As a professional critic for many, many years.
Oh,
at a
oh my.
newspaper. And just the way that whole industry has changed.
Yes, it has.
And I was really interested to see that you're collaborating with a critic.
I am. I love him.
If you could just elaborate on that a little more, and maybe where you see sort of this dialogue that has been dwindling. How can we revive that a little bit?
The artist critic?
Yeah.
Well, I think first of all, artists shouldn't, I mean, my relationships with critics, and it's not just Rog, I also, friends of mine are Andrew Russeth or Ben Davis. Andrew Russeth with Art News. Ben Davis is with ArtNet. I mean, they're all friendly and wonderful people. I don't expect them to write on my work. So I think that disconnect is really important. Like, to not think that I'm friends with them because of that pressure, right? So I think that's the first step. The second step is just to see them for who they are, and they're just like they're seeing me and my work and contributing, and their work contributing as well as writers or critics. And then we find our commonalities, just like any other relationship. I collaborate with them in different ways. So if I know of something that is going wrong in the art world, I know who to turn to, and then I can send that to them and give them information. They act as a policing for me in my community. And then vice versa, if there's an opportunity for me to give them to lecture somewhere, I give them that opportunity. But also, I think just personally, my relationship with Rod is he's multifaceted. Like, he's a curator too, he's a photographer, he does a lot of different things. So he thinks more like an artist. So I think it's just the mentality of both of us and what we do for being on the road together, or just speaking to people together and trying to inform and inspire, but also create opportunities for others. But I think that it's just a matter of also artists giving up by the fact if they're friends with somebody, that expectation that they're going to write on their work. You're not looking at them as something as a service in a way. I think artists get caught up in that. Does that make sense? You understand that, right?
Yeah.
So that has to go away, and then it can be more. I mean, I don't care if these people write on my work. It's not that. I mean, they're wonderful, they're great, but it's not that important to me. It's more important to me that I have a friendship with them. I have my priorities, which is different. So I think a lot of artists want that professional priority first. Thank you for the question. So I think that's good, right? Thank you everybody for having me. And whoever wrote me these questions, can I see you afterward? I'd love to talk to you more. Thank you so much. Thank you, Leanne, and thank you, Carrie. I'm going to get these copies to you.